English made easy. Hey guys! Bored of those vocab lists? Me too. At 1 Degree North Companion, we're turning wordly wise into an adventure to make learning actually interesting. Let's jump in.
When you think of a castle, what pops into your head? Probably towering spires, huge halls, maybe a fairy tale princess or two. We all have this romantic idea of what a castle is. But what was it really like to live inside one of these giant stone fortresses? Well, let's pull back the curtain and separate the fantasy from the often brutal reality. And sure, that part is true. Castles were absolutely the centers of power. They were home to kings and queens, lords and ladies. But that's pretty much where the fairy tale grinds to a halt. Let's dive into the much less glamorous and, frankly, far more interesting side of castle life. Because the first thing that would have hit you walking into a real medieval castle wasn't the grandeur. Oh no, it was the bone-deep cold. Those incredible stone walls made for a perpetually damp, chilly, just clammy environment. Can you imagine living with that constant seeping chill that you can never quite shake off? And if the cold wasn't enough to put you off, the smell would have been overpowering. Just think about it. The collective stench of medieval life, all trapped and concentrated inside those stone walls. It would be a profound shock to a modern nose, that's for sure. So where did this horrible stench even come from? Well, you have to picture this potent cocktail of smells. You've got unwashed bodies, you've got animal waste, and you've got overflowing suspects. It was a truly unavoidable assault on your senses every single day. Yeah, the sources of the smell were everywhere. Livestock were often brought inside the castle walls for safety. Personal hygiene wasn't what it is today, to put it mildly. And all the human waste? It was collected in pits that had to be emptied by people with the very unfortunate job title of gong farmers, a truly disgusting and thankless job. So how did they fight this constant stench? The short answer is they didn't really eliminate it. They just tried to bury it. Servants would constantly strew or scatter fragrant herbs and flowers across the stone floors. It was this constant, and I've got to imagine, mostly losing battle against the overwhelming odor. But here's the thing you have to remember. Castles were never built for comfort. They were built for war. Their number one defense was their massive walls. And when I say massive, I mean they could be up to 20 feet thick. And those walls were not just for show. The sheer, incredible thickness of those massive blocks of stone was the literal difference between life and death when an enemy army appeared on the horizon. The tactical genius went into every little architectural detail, even the spiral staircases. Now get this, they were almost always built in a clockwise direction. Why? Well, because most soldiers were right-handed. That meant if you were an attacker fighting your way up the stairs, your sword-on would be jammed up against the central pillar. But the defenders coming down, they had a full range of motion to swing their swords. It's a simple design, but absolutely deadly.
You see, in a violent and pretty unpredictable world, the castle was the ultimate haven. It was a safe place, a refuge, not just for the lord and his family, but for everyone who lived nearby. When danger was coming, they could all rush behind those walls for protection.
So what happened when that haven was put to the ultimate test? What happened when an army actually showed up at the gates and decided to lay siege to the castle? How did they possibly withstand that? The whole defensive strategy was built on one simple, brutal concept: retaliate. For every single move an attacker made, the defenders had a painful countermove ready to go. The goal was to make the price of attacking so incredibly high that the enemy would just give up and go home. And the tools of retaliation were brutal. Defenders would rain down arrows, drop huge rocks, and pour boiling liquids from the top of the walls. And if the attackers somehow managed to break through the main gate, they were met with a nasty surprise from what were literally called murder holes in the ceiling right above them. It was basically a kill zone where they could be finished off with ease. The age of the castle lasted for centuries, evolving from these simple wooden forts into the massive stone fortresses we think of today. But around the year 1500, a new invention came along that would change warfare forever, and it basically spelled the end for the castle's dominance. And that invention was gunpowder. All of a sudden, an enemy army didn't need to go over the walls, they could go through them. Cannons could now breach the once impenetrable defenses from a distance. Those massive walls just weren't a guarantee of safety anymore. As our source material puts it so perfectly, castles were no longer the havens they had once been. Just like that, the age of knights and castles was effectively over, completely shattered by technology. So what happened to all these once mighty fortresses? Well, today, a lot of them have been totally transformed. They've swapped their military purpose for a cultural one, becoming historic sites, museums, and sometimes even incredibly fancy hotels. A lot of castles just fell into ruin after they became obsolete. But in more recent times, there's been this huge effort to restore these amazing structures, to carefully preserve them so that future generations, like us, can experience them. Of course, making a medieval castle livable today is a massive undertaking. It means you have to install all the modern conveniences we take for granted, like plumbing and electricity, and then furnish these huge cavernous halls to turn them from clammy stone caves into comfortable homes or luxury hotels. And that brings us to a final, thought-provoking question for you. Now that you know all this, their historic strengths, but also their modern vulnerabilities, would you still see an ancient castle as a safe haven in a modern conflict? If you live nearby, would you take shelter inside? It's interesting to think about. All right, now for a fun little challenge. I want you to describe your dream castle. Would it be a massive, defensible fortress? Or would it be a beautifully restored, luxurious home? Try to use at least 3 of the keywords from our explainer today in your description. Thanks so much for watching.
Hope you guys enjoyed that last lesson. If you did, smash that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell. Ready for more? The next one starts right now.
You know, some stories are meant to put you to sleep. This is not one of them. This is a warning. Let's dig into a really dark tale from the old German town of Hamelin. It's a story about a promise and the absolutely terrifying cost of breaking it.
Think about that for a second. This isn't just some line from a horror movie. Imagine that this is your reality. We're not talking about a simple pest problem here. The town was literally drowning in a plague. The story paints this just horrifying picture. The town was completely overrun. And these weren't shy little mice. These were rats so bold they were fighting dogs and killing cats. They were in the kitchens, eating food right out of the vats. They were everywhere. No house, no person was safe from them.
So, in the middle of this nightmare, what was the town's leadership doing? Well, the mayor was an expert in this one specific thing: bluster. All talk, all loud, empty promises to his terrified citizens. But behind all that noise, nothing. He was useless. And this is where it gets almost funny, if it wasn't so pathetic. He stands up and vows to exterminate them. I mean, what a powerful word, right? Final, absolute. But in reality, he and his council had no clue what to do. They were just sitting around, full of bluster, while their town was being eaten alive. And then, just when it seems like all hope is lost, someone appears. It's like he walked straight out of a nightmare himself. He didn't look like anyone they'd ever seen before. His clothes, his whole vibe, it immediately screamed outsider.
The word they used to describe him was pied. It's a weird word, right? It just means multicolored. His coat was half yellow, half red. Now back then, showing up dressed like that wasn't just a fashion statement. It meant you were different. And to these people, different meant dangerous. So this strange man makes an offer, and the mayor, in a total panic, makes a reckless promise. 50,000 guilders. I mean, it's an insane amount of money. He just blurted it out, not even thinking. He just wanted the rats gone.
Remember that word the mayor used? Exterminate? Well, this stranger, he promised he could actually do it, to wipe them out, completely. A final solution to their plague. For a price, of course. And then he did it. The piper just walks into the street, puts this pipe to his lips, and starts to play. And you hear this grrr, rumbling, rats, just swarms of them, pouring out of the houses. He leads them, like they're in a trance, straight down to the river, and they all just plunge in and die. Just like that, the town was saved.
Okay, so the nightmare's over. Time to pay the hero, right? Well, with the danger gone, the mayor's gratitude vanished. Now just look at this. The promise was 50,000 guilders. What he actually offered? 50. No, that's not a typo. 50. It was a complete and total insult.
Isn't it amazing how fast a life-saving reward can become paltry? Suddenly the money that was worth paying to save their lives was now just some worthless little amount. The mayor figured, hey, the rats are gone, what's this guy gonna do?
And it gets worse. When the piper rightfully demanded his pay, the mayor didn't just say no. He laughed at him. He taunted him. I mean, the arrogance here is just off the charts. You just watch the man control an entire species with a flute, and you're gonna mock him? Bad move. Really bad move.
You can't cheat a man who deals in magic and not expect consequences. The mayor's cheapness, his broken promise, well, it demanded a new kind of payment. It demanded revenge.
So the piper walked back into that same street. He raised the pipe to his lips again. But this time, the music was different. It wasn't that shrill sound for the rats. No, this was beautiful. It was soft, sweet, and absolutely enchanting. And then they came out. Not the rats, the children. From every single house, all the kids of Hamelin walked out into the street with these big, wondrous eyes, following that music. Their parents could only stand there and watch, completely helpless. He led them right out of town. He walked them to the side of a mountain, and a doorway just opened in the rock. They all walked inside, and the door closed. 130 children. Gone. The mayor saved his 50,000 guilders, but the town lost its entire future.
It's a terrifying story for sure, a great way to scare kids into behaving. But here's where it gets really unsettling. What if I told you that this wasn't just a fairy tale? What if something like this actually happened?
Yeah, this is the chilling part. The actual town records from Hamelin, Germany have an entry from June 26, 1284. It says that 130 children from the town just disappeared, vanished. Now, historians have all kinds of theories. Maybe it was the Black Death, maybe they got swept up in the Children's Crusade, or maybe it was some kind of mass migration. But the truth is, nobody really knows. The story of the piper might just be a dark, twisted way of explaining a very real, very tragic mystery.
So whether it was a real piper or some other historical disaster, the lesson that came out of it has been echoing for centuries. And it's brutal. The price for that broken promise wasn't just the children. It was the town's future. It was their next generation stolen away because their leaders were greedy and dishonest. And that's really the heart of it all, isn't it? This story is screaming at us that integrity, that keeping your word isn't some paltry little thing you can ignore. It's everything. A promise is a debt, and if you don't pay it, the universe has a way of collecting. And the price might be more than you could ever imagine. So I'll just leave you with this thought. It's so easy to blame the greedy mayor and his bluster, right? He's the villain. But what about all the citizens who just stood by and watched him break the promise? If you were there, what would you have done? What does it take for good people to stand up and stop a disaster before it happens? Definitely something to think about.
Thanks so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed today's show. If you did, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss an update. I'll see you in the next one.